You are going on first dates for your friend?
Yes.
How?
Right? Okay.
This is cheap. Do the men know when they're do you look like your friend?
I do not. And there's no like catfishing involved. So we have taken real pictures of my friend, multiples of them, so you can see her from all the different angles. And we have put together dating profiles on 2 apps. And then I go through and screen the people based on my knowledge and understanding of her.
Okay.
So when we match, then I reach out and say,
people, is it men, women, non-binary too? Or?
It's men. In this case, it's men.
Okay.
So when she matches with a guy, I reach out and I say, hey, this is kind of the first screener, right? Hey, here's the deal. I am not this person. This is not a catfish. Like, I'm not this person. But as mentioned in the profile, she kind of hates first dates. And
I am a Nigerian prince. And
so as a way to screen through this, like, I am going to meet up with you if you're so inclined, and we'll chat a bit. I'll get to know you a little bit. And if we have a good time and you seem like a good fit for her, then great. And I introduce you, and that's that.
Okay. There's problems here.
Okay. Tell me the problems.
This is the plot line for America's Next Big Rom-Com.
Mm-hmm.
You fall for the dude.
Absolutely, but that's the thing.
He
We've
falls
already
for
built
you,
that in.
But he goes on the date with her, and then there's a whole, shenanigans ensue.
No, because here's the thing. If he goes on the date with me and likes me, then I can go out with him, and that's the end of the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't actually have to, like, she's been very clear about the fact that, like, look, you can skim off the top. So that's
I love this new socialist view of the world.
Yeah, it's like, oh, no big deal, right? So, like, unlike the rom-com where there would be a spark and then I would go and do the introduction, I would just be like, hey, gonna keep this one to myself and then move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the way this would work. But the goal really here is for me to screen these people for her. Okay. So I'm not like going into it looking for that, but we have a fail-safe for that if that were to happen.
Where are there major questions for this friend? And if this friend doesn't want me asking this stuff, we don't have to go. But like, are there biggies that are like, total red flag, total green flag that you're like, all right, off to the next round, or
Well, I'm hoping to screen out people with pets because she is not interested in anybody who has pets. She is not interested in anybody
sorry,
who's...
Flo's friend. It's not going to work.
I know, right? She's not interested in anybody who smokes. And
I don't smoke. That's fine.
And she either wants someone who doesn't want kids or has kids and doesn't want more. So that's kind of where she is.
Okay.
So those are the three biggies.
And you, on the other hand, you love pets. You're a chain smoker, and you want like 9 kids. I want this works out really well.
Kids. I want kids to just be like, I want to collect kids
coming out
like
of your ear.
Collects cats, like Shannon collects cats. That's what I want.
You want kids climbing on your shoulder like a cat
everywhere. I want it to just be like, we're doing the show, and all of a sudden there's a hand. That's what I want.
Yeah. Good. The good thing is it sounds like you and your friend have different interests and different red flags.
Yes, but what's also really interesting about it is like it matches together 2 things, right? Like she's more of an introvert who really enjoys literally 5th dates and beyond, right? And I'm more of an extrovert who's like, if you hit me up, I'll agree to go to coffee with it. Like not even like as a date thing, just like I like meeting new people. It's fun. It's exciting. Like you get to ask all the questions. Like they're a blank slate. There's infinite things to know about this person, and you know none of them. So you literally can start anywhere. And there's something that's really like energizing about that. Like first dates are the best. So I'm just like, this feels awesome.
I have.
So I get to go on first dates with no pressure.
No. I do like a good no pressure first date.
Yeah.
And it's almost always a blast.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the other person's cool. Usually the problem is the guy's not cool. So if the guy can
Right.
be cool, then it's fine.
And if the guy goes, you want to do what? You're not the one, we move on.
Yeah.
Right? Like if he's not even into the premise, then it's just like, but you kind of want somebody who's like with the shits, you know, like that's kind of a screener. It's like, if you can't handle this, you're not gonna make it, bro.
I'm trying to think of what I would do if someone I matched with they would suddenly like flipped a screen and was like, "You're going on a date with my good friend," and it's like, I don't know if I'd be like, "What?" or if I'd be like, "What?" and then also like, "Oh yeah, totally, I'm gonna do this." Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck this means, but yes, I will absolutely be a part of this.
Like and the other thing is like, I can show you a picture of the two of us together to be like, this is not a catfish. This person exists. I exist. Right. You're going to go out on a date with this. You saw this one already. You liked her profile. You're going to go out with me. I'm going to do some screening and then I'll introduce you to her.
It sounds like a Photoshop and some deep fakes to me, but fellas.
We actually think it would be great reality television.
No, I think this is interesting. I think we're onto something here. So if not a rom-com, I'm happy to write that. Some reality TV. Let's find some producers.
We just need a few producers.
We'll get on that. Well, best of luck to your friend. This sounds promising. I feel like you're going to find like a husband through this.
I'm going to find her a husband. I am committed to, like, I really do feel like if I can just get her through those first dates, I can pick a winner.
You know, you've always told me you're monogamous. This is going to be your poly situation. It's the three of you are going to find that you just love each other and it works.
It's going to be the perfect throuple.
Yeah. Aw, the perfect throuple. The name of this episode.
The name of this, what are we going to make it? A show? A podcast?
Yeah, no, we can't do this episode because I worry about search engine optimization, folks.
And now you're going to make fun of me for being old and not understanding search engine optimization.
Getting angry about like, this article says this in Google and then it says this when I click it.
Is anybody else not upset about this? When you're looking for an article, you know the title, you search for it, and then a different name pops up and you're like, is that the article I'm looking for? Because I'm pretty sure Google, I told you exactly what I wanted. And I don't understand why you just don't show me a link to exactly that with those words already in it, because that's supposedly the title. But
we're going to do like a journalism episode once a month where I like explain these weird little intricacies.
I just hate it.
Okay. You want to start the show?
Let's start it.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Oh, hello everyone. You have Kempa. I like when you scream so loud that Zoom mutes you for me.
I do too.
That makes me incredible. Like, it's like Zoom's like, and we need to protect Dave's ears. That's what just happened right now.
Yes.
So no Shannon today. Shannon's got a lot on her plate right now. No Skylar today. Skylar has finally gotten it, folks. His bathtub vaccine, he took it like 48 times, I think, but it finally gave way and he finally got COVID.
Oh my gosh.
Skylar, a speedy recovery. I think is going to be fine. Given the strength of the work that he's been doing on this as a public health professional.
Skylar was vaccinated with an actual vaccine. And I would be remiss if I, oh gosh. I would be remiss if I did not clarify that these are just jokes. That Skylar is actually vaccinated with an FDA-approved vaccine. Yes, also speedy recovery, Skylar. We love you.
And right
Sorry
here,
you got the vid, man.
So it's just you and me, which I'm really excited about. I was actually just saying I think it was to Skylar the other day, how much I enjoy. We very rarely have we on this show done one-on-one like episodes, but recently Shannon and I did a one-on-one. And then you and Skylar did, you're doing your Marvel your Voices Cinematic Universe stuff one-on-one. And like, it's so fun to hear the one-on-one dynamics. It changes things up a bit. So, so this is our fucking time to shine. Excited.
Yes.
Look how excited Flo looks. Right off the top, let's start with a couple things. We love what we do, folks. If you love what we do, please go to patreon.com/voicesrivercity, as little as $5 a month. It keeps us going. Pays for subscriptions, all these other things. On top of that, you're going to get some premium content. Like I mentioned, the Voices Cinematic Universe episodes, which are just a ball. We've been doing some other special episodes too, including me discussing a piece recently that I wrote in Jacobin. Plenty of more of that to come. Plenty of patron-only events coming up now that the sun's finally coming out and it's warming up. So hop on board on that right now. And thank you to all of you, because we have had a good number of folks signing on to support us in recent weeks. So thanks again there. And then on top of that, our friends at Social Justice Politicore are doing a report card on local electeds. So go to socialjusticesac.org. You will see the report card link right at the top of the page. Take the survey. Let them know what you think of your local electeds so that they can later in the year come out with their report card. We're going to have Andy from their side here on, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Very excited for that, but I just wanted to flag that for folks early on. But beyond that, Flo. Start the show.
All right.
Anything you want to add? What's going on with you?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. Take the report card.
All right. How was Maui?
Maui was great. Went for a friend's birthday and it rained every other day. So we got to spend some quality time on the beach and also some hibernation time inside, which is the perfect way to celebrate birthdays. So it was really nice to be able to do that, especially since she didn't get to have her big birthday celebration because we were in pandemic, stay-at-home orders at the time. So it was nice to be able to finally kind of be safely outside together.
I texted you. I was like on my way to a date, and then they asked me to pick up some ingredients, and then I was like, what was I looking for? Pesto sauce?
Yeah, you were looking for pesto.
I was like, what's the right pesto to get? And so I was like, I called you, and you're like, yeah, I'm on the beach in Maui, and I'm like, I am so sorry. You're like, no, I've got all the time in the world to talk pesto. Let's do it.
Let's do this.
So thanks for your help on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess we're going to jump right into it.
I think so, unless you got more to talk about.
No.
All right, Flo. I feel like you and I usually have a lot to talk about. Let's start today with an interesting piece that came out of the Los Angeles Times. This was dated on March 12th. So that would be Sunday of this last week. It's titled, "Why Some Progressive Groups Are Staying Out of This LA City Council Race." Now, this is District 6, Nury Martinez's district. Nury, of course, stepped down. She was the head of city council in LA, but she was recorded in that secret recording that really was the downfall of a lot of people saying some very racist, anti-Black things. And so she stepped down. Flo, tell us about this story, about this race, and your thoughts.
Yes. Well, there is a primary happening, a special election happening on April 4th. And as it goes in California, basically the top two then advance on to, so it's like a compulsory runoff situation.
Unless you get over 50%.
Unless you get over 50%. Yep.
In the first round.
And which is hard to do when you have a field of, I believe it is 6 candidates here.
7. And I think they're
7.
all relatively unknowns. So I don't see any of them making over 50 the first round.
Right. So LA has, a pretty wide field of progressive organizations. Some are local chapters of national organizations, and others are part of local coalitions. And this article goes through and talks about how so few of them have actually taken a position on this race, and which I at first I found interesting, and I thought about the experience of writing the Sacramento Sister Circle and BWAPA voter guide for Sacramento County.
For folks who don't know, sorry, were you going to explain?
I was, but I enjoy your editorial comments. So go ahead.
Okay. These are Black women run voter guides. BWAPA is Black Women Organizing
for Political Action.
There you go. And then Sac Sister Circle is Sac Sister Circle. And it's a bunch of Black women leaders basically in the Sacramento region. And you've all been doing voter guides for, as long as I've known you. So at least 6 years.
Yeah, we're coming up on the 2024 election will actually be our 10th anniversary.
Wow.
Of doing this for every election, primary and general.
Okay.
And so as I'm reading this article, I'm obviously thinking about my own experience of, participating in and helping to coordinate the efforts of bringing all these Black women together from Sacramento County to be able to help write this guide. And so we have, in several races, chosen not to recommend a candidate. And we typically don't do endorsements, but WAPA does a formal endorsement process. So we do note that in our voter guide, but typically we just make recommendations. It really started out as a educational piece of here's what we're thinking based on our values. It was a Google Doc for many years. And it was just kind of take it or leave. Here's what we think. Here's why, take it or leave it. Right. And so I thought about that, and I thought about some of the difficult races where we've just said the whole field is not worth a recommendation, and here's what we think, right? So initially going into the article, I thought that's what was happening here. And in some ways it is, right? Some of the groups, while they're all considered to be progressive organizations, and the LA Times described them as, far left activists, they, at the same time, have different interests. And so when we think about some of the groups, right, we have the Democratic Socialists of America, we have Ground Game, we have Sunrise.
Ground Game LA, what is that? It's sort of like electing in progressives in the
candidates.
LA region.
Yep. Exactly.
I was trying to think of a sort of a correlate in the Sacramento region, and I would almost think of Kula's social justice political core work. Yeah.
Well, actually, it would be the PAC.
The PAC. Yeah.
Yes, the nonprofit is just looking at the policy side and doing that kind of thing. But yes, it would be their political action committee, the work that's happening there to be able to help. I mean, even some of BWAPA's, do you want to run for office? Here's the way to do it. Those kind of, we're trying to move in that direction and work in the field of electoralism. Right.
So you've got Ground Game LA, you've got DSA LA, the Sunrise Movement LA. None of them.
Then you have People's City Council. Which
none of them picked anybody.
Yes. And so, it's interesting to think about these organizations. Even Black Lives Matter, I think LA didn't choose someone.
They pushed for a write-in candidate, I believe.
Yes. They're pushing for a write-in candidate, a Pastor James Thomas. But that basically means, and actually I don't even know if they're pushing for it. Their co-founder just said that, and I quote, many members are individually supporting this person who's a self-described activist as a write-in.
BLM tends not to endorse.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, but it just, coming together, here we have these groups that typically would take a position, and here is this vacant seat with this field of relative unknowns, and in some ways it's like, yeah, you may not know these candidates, and yes, there may be a bunch of them, but this is actually a time where you could thin the herd a bit if any, because these are all unknown candidates who maybe don't have the same amount of like political backing or name recognition. So you do at this point, right? Like Sunrise has name recognition, others have, so like if people are looking for, I don't know these people, where should I look? And they see you have like that gives somebody an immediate like, oh, let me look into this person, right? And so it is surprising to me that of the 7 candidates, they haven't even taken a, well, here's what we're thinking kind of approach.
Right. Yeah. That's been really interesting to me. But at the same time, given the way that a special election works and how little time you have, it's really hard to make a decision off something like that. And then also looking at it, it's like if these orgs find 5 or 6 of them to be acceptable candidates, I kind of assumed they're just waiting for one of the horses to get through, and then they get behind them.
Yeah, that's probably it. I mean, there are a few groups that have weighed in, like LA Forward Action, and they're this group that's focused on housing, environmental justice, and like government reform in general. And so they endorse one of the candidates, Marco Santana, but it is an unbacked endorsement, so they're not going to be spending any money.
Mm-hmm.
And
which,
then,
by the way, nobody has money. If you're a leftist org at this time of the election cycle,
yeah.
you got nothing. You're limping by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least in my experience, I don't know.
Yeah.
So do you, I know there is one Black woman candidate who's a prison abolitionist. Do like you were mentioning some sort of affinity to her earlier. What are your thoughts on her?
So I mean, I obviously there's a group that we mentioned that has endorsed Marco Santana. I don't know anything about any of these candidates, so I just want to make it really clear. Like there are 7 candidates in the field. I don't know anything about any of them other than what I'm reading here.
Same.
But I did.
And the funny thing is, none of these orgs in LA,
right.
They admit openly that they're like, we have not done ground game in District 6 in this city, right. Which is a problem for leftist orgs throughout the country. Mm-hmm. I think here in Sac, probably the only one that actually has made inroads in like lower income neighborhoods is like ACE, or
mm-hmm.
like the ones that are like really willing to go in and knock on doors every single day. And a lot of these leftist orgs down there are like, yeah, no, we haven't done D6.
Right. Right. So there's that. And then there's another candidate that is endorsed by Sunrise at Occidental College, like the students that were there, and that's Isaac Kim. And so, but the candidate that just stood out to me was Antoinette Scully. She's a Black woman. I'm a Black woman, so my eye naturally literally went to her in the picture that was included. But it was also the description of her that it says she's a police abolitionist. She's backed by Feel the Burn, San Fernando, and East Valley Indivisibles. Mm-hmm. And she said that anti-Blackness and patriarchy are our influences when it comes to election endorsements. And I found that interesting because my first thought was, okay, well, I know those positions, but are there some other reasons why people are a little bit reluctant about you? Are you new, right? Like I'm thinking about all the issues that we think about here in Sacramento when we're going through this of like, here comes a Katie Maple running in a race, but she's new to the area and this, that, and the other, right? And so you're weighing all of that. So it's not just what positions you have, but what context do they come in?
Right.
I was thinking, well, maybe she's good on this issue, but like not great on climate or something else that Sunrise might care about. So I'm just trying to go through in my head what might be going on. And when she said that, I'm like, I don't know enough about this race to say, yes, sis, you're absolutely right. I mean, let me take a step back. Anti-Blackness and patriarchy are always at play. Real. So like, yeah. I don't need to like I'm not here to argue with her that either of those are not real phenomena. They are. I also don't know if that's like, if she's good on all the other issues and people are just not backing her because of our overt and covert biases and how they show up in structural ways, or if there are actually like Sunrise is like, yeah, you're great on this, but you're backing the Keystone Pipeline, for example, or something weird, right? I don't know enough about her to say, but I did find that to be interesting because I saw that happen locally with Alana Matthews' campaign. Here we had a progressive woman running for district attorney who knew the issues, who shared our values. And it wasn't so much progressive groups didn't stand behind her, but it was sort of people who complained about the Republican DA that we had had for years. And then when we actually had an alternative, said, I really didn't want change. I just wanted a diet Republican. So I'm going to choose her, basically somebody from her office to be her successor. Right. And so having had that experience, I thought a lot of that, I think if Alana had been not a woman, and especially not a Black woman, I wonder if the outcome of that election might have been different. And so when Antoinette said it, I was like, yeah, I get it. So I am curious now to learn more about her candidacy, and as well as some of the other people running, to just see, is there really no reason to support any of these folks? And I kind of want to dig into, I wish people said more about why, and maybe they didn't want to say it to the LA Times, maybe the LA Times didn't include it, but 7 candidates, especially given that some of them have some backing of some of these orgs, even just outside of that immediate area, raises some questions for me. I won't say concerns, I'm just going to say questions for me about why.
All of that is incredibly valid, and special elections are their own beast. And I just think there's so little money right now getting thrown around politically, and it's such a weird race. It's 7 people, 7 relative no names, like people that folks don't know. And I just think it's just, I don't think anybody knows how this one pans out.
Right. Correct.
They've already gotten their ballots now. And this piece just came out a couple days ago. So that tells you how sort of knee jerk this whole thing has to be. And I don't know. It's such a weird race to me. But
it also, to me, seems like when there's a dearth of money being infused into this district, and again, I don't know, maybe folks are getting mailers from Big Oil all the time and they picked one of these candidates and that's their person. I don't know. I'm just thinking all the more influence, the lane is clear for folks here, right? In our region, there are multiple voter guides. I mean, I love the Sacramento Sister Circle and Bawapa guide, but Sunrise puts out a guide. There are other groups that put out guides. The Democratic Party usually puts out a guide. You might get one
DSA does
from...
an endorsement here or there if people ask them to.
So I guess what I'm saying is if there's not a known guide, and if there's not a lot of money and energy being spent on this race, then it feels like it's even, for lack of a better word, cheaper to go on your Twitter with your 10,000 followers and just be like, hey, you know who we got? We got whatever, right?
I mean, that's real.
See what happens. That's virtually free.
Well, I mean, maybe folks just aren't seeing much sunlight among these candidates, which is good for that region then, if that's the case, and if they're all good. Hopefully, if
that's also true. There may not be a big distinction. Maybe it's a field of just roll the spin the wheel and see where you land, and 6 on one, half a dozen on the other.
The thing that interests me about this story was that a LA Times reporter was looking at this city council race and said, this deserves inches in the LA Times. We want to look at what the leftists have to say about this election. I think that's what blew my mind. And that they did go to Ground Game, Sunrise, DSA, Black Lives Matter, People's City Council. This is establishment media acknowledging power in leftist spaces. And when I read that, I was kind of looking back at the last 2 election cycles in Sacramento city council races. And you can argue with me on a lot of these things, and I will argue with me on them too. But I was trying to think of like which candidates in the last two election cycles they did receive support from SAC Sunrise, from SAC DSA, from Social Justice Political, BWAPA, from Social Justice PAC, BWAPA, SAC Sister Circle, I feel like I just missed a major one here. Sorry. But that got support from multiple of these groups, and the groups were able to kind of, through their loose coalition, mobilize some folks. Obviously, none of this is ever causal. We don't know if it was the cause or if the person was just a great candidate. They knocked on enough doors on themselves. They hired folks in the right way. Like you don't know. But when I was trying to look back at the last two election cycles and think of who won that the lefties supported, I look at 2020, Katie Valenzuela, the lefties were behind her. My Vying, the lefties were behind her in one of the tightest races that I can remember, against honestly a good dude, a good candidate too, right? Pastor Les. And he got a couple of lefty groups behind him too, I think, until he started taking the real estate money.
Yeah, and then that's when things got really weird, honestly. Like it was I actually was like, I think it was, maybe the last election, I was going back and looking through our past voter guides, and I looked at the primary race for Pastor Les and my Vang. And we did a really, if you just read through it and didn't read the recommendation at the top, at first you'd be like, I'm not sure where this is going, because they said really nice things about both of these candidates.
He's a good guy, right?
And that was really intentional, because Pastor Les has done tremendous work in the community, right? I mean, even as, recently as pandemic, like South Sacramento Christian Center was one of the places where you could go and get vaccines, where you can go and get food, where you could, they were doing real wraparound services.
I tested people for months there on COVID.
They've had me come to their church, and they were part of the reduction of African American child deaths. I've come and talked about trauma from the pulpit there. They are really deeply steeped in the community and doing really great work. Pastor Les hosted the Sacramento Sister Circle and some of the crucial conversations with men years ago. So there was a real respect for the role that they've played in the community. And also,
I think a mutual friend of ours actually convinced him to take that real estate money. You shouldn't have done that, buddy. You shouldn't have told him to.
Listen, I don't know what happened, but it was like as the race went on, the Pastor Les that I know, respect, love, appreciate, admire, turned into this candidate Les that I didn't recognize. And so there were, I've actually really been reflecting on this recently, because there was a common theme when, we've talked about it on the show already, but when Katie Maple did her town hall, to talk about her Rook vote, and people who knew her saying, I don't recognize you anymore. And in some ways I was just like, oh, this is a familiar feeling, because I definitely remember having that feeling as the race went on. And by the time we got close to the election and he was against the rent control, and I was just like, what is what bizarro world have I stumbled into? And it was just a very strange time, because here was the Pastor Les who was on the front lines, who was illegally kettled and arrested with the other folks in East Sac. I mean, who literally was not out there that night, but came out because his father
This is during the Stephon Clark protest in East Sacramento. Yeah.
His dad was watching live on somebody's feed and saw me getting hit with a bicycle. And he said, it was like, Pastor Les, you better get out there. That's the kind of guy we're talking about. This is not lightweight stuff, right? And he was on the police commission, for a while. They're this is somebody who was really steeped in the community. So I say all that to say, there have been really important races where you've had good candidates. And I felt in the same way that I had concerns about some of the races this time in terms of this district deserves to have some real choices, right? I felt like D8, that was the race D8 deserved. Like, even though in the end,
I don't think I've seen a
moving.
district in Sacramento get two candidates that I was kind of like, all right, like usually it's like two candidates that I'm like, oh no, or one where I'm like, this one's got to win, you know, like this one was like, they seem pretty good, and his about face was a Hail Mary, and I wish he hadn't have done that Hail Mary, but that's what he was doing, in my opinion.
Oh, I completely agree with that.
But back to my original point, the lefties won that race. The lefties won the Katie Valenzuela race, or they just won it on themselves because they're just good candidates. 2022, really the only candidates that the lefties came behind were Katie Maple in District 5, who ended up winning. And then some of them, at least most of them, came behind Karina Talamontes in District 3. Now, I have issues certainly with Karina, also with Katie, and I'm interested to see where she goes in the future. She's been making some pretty good steps in the last week or two, but those were, whether we want to debate that post-election or not, who they are now, those were the horses that the lefties were behind, and they won. So my read is that the lefty orgs are 4 for 4 in the last 2 election cycles. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, it does to me.
So, and again, causal, we don't know if it's causal or not, but the ones that they put their weight behind did win. So that's saying to me that, like, maybe this is a political force, and it is worth asking. It is worth maybe a daily periodical, Teresa or Ariana, to report on something like this, right? Like, that's kind of where I am on this. Like, I do think, like, it's really interesting that the LA Times gave that much credence to leftist organizations.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And I think part of it is the part that people, I think, are struggling with, especially those who think that millennials are under 20, is that millennials, the elder millennials are in their 40s, okay? So we vote, we got, like, we're not children anymore. So I think there's a part that, right, you recognize as you get older, people tend to vote more, right? And so while it has not proven true in my life and the life of most of the people in my circle, that the older we get, the more conservative we get. In fact, the older we get, the further to the left I think most of us are moving. But I do think the older we get, the more, like, consistently engaged in voting, those kinds of trends have held. I think because of the stability of like your social circle. Maybe you're not moving cities as often, even if you're still moving, because rent and cost of housing is high. Like, there's a little more permanence to some of the places that you tend to be and the things you're observing, and you start getting to know people, and you start getting to pay attention to, some of the reasons for the things that were just irritating you and that the olds were doing before. And now you're seeing that the people in charge are your age or younger, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, somebody should do something about that, right? Yeah. So I think that's part of the calculation. And so younger people tend to be more progressive, if not specifically progressive. I think that's why this is so surprising, that all these organizations would take a step back when it feels like the time is nigh for them to take a step forward. Yeah. I mean, I don't presume to know what's going on in these lefty orgs down in LA. Sure. But I do think it's an interesting correlate with Sacramento, and looking forward to 2024, I'm really interested to see how that manifests with leftist orgs, and if they're respected or not.
often, we only talk about labor on the left, but these leftist orgs, do you know how many of them work in labor? How many of them are with 1021, SEIU 1000, all these other labor orgs?
Mm-hmm.
All of them are in labor. So there is no difference between leftist orgs and labor, other than the fact that leftist orgs are unafraid to do what they need to do, whereas leadership in labor tells labor what to do, right? So I think looking forward to 2024, District 2 and District 6 are really interesting to me. District 2, we quietly know a little lefty who might be running there. I don't think we want to talk about that yet. But that's exciting, right? In our current person in that office is a lame duck, has been profoundly embarrassed the last couple of years in his office. District 4, it's important to defend the most progressive council member that we currently have, the most pro-tenant, the most, like, you name it, that's what she is. District 6 is another one. It appears Isaac Gonzalez will be the candidate. Feel free to chime in on that, Flo. But
I just wasn't sure. Has he started fundraising and whatever?
No. But it's
I'm
it's
not
an open
sure.
secret.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I'm not sure if Eric Guerra is running again.
But Eric's not going to be the prog anyway, right?
Right. No. You're absolutely right. I'm just saying, I the reason why I was saying that is because I wasn't entirely sure if Isaac would run against Guerra.
Oh, I think he should.
I'm not that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't know if he will.
I think he could beat him. Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that.
But I'm just saying, I think there's a different conversation that was happening when Eric Guerra was running for assembly, and there was the if Eric wins, who's going to run for the seat? And I think that's a different calculation for some people. And again, I don't know, because I have not had this conversation with Isaac, but I think that's a different calculation than, am I going to run against the incumbent?
Interesting. Well, Isaac, I hope you do, and I hope you take the left lane. And then D8, obviously, you got to support Mai. But I think Mai's got so much social capital there. I think she's in a good place. I don't think Pastor Les could even put up the same fight as last time around at this point.
I don't think he wants to.
Yeah.
If I'm just I think that race took a lot out of him. I think it took a lot out of his wife, Katrina. I think that race was just hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see them jumping.
Katrina's wonderful too. I worked with her during COVID as well.
Absolutely.
Testing. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. Those were some thoughts I had. Mainstream local media, consider paying more attention to these lefty groups, because I do think they have more power than you think they do. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk real quick? Can we do a little recap of the bullshit with the anti-trans shit that was going on this last week?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay. Flo, I assume you listened to last episode where we had Evan, friend of the show.
I did. Evan, you are the most adorable human I know. That was just absolutely wonderful.
Who else could get away with just claiming unilaterally Lisa Kaplan or as a friend of the show, and you're not a host.
But he knows that we say it both literally, and that's why sometimes we have to say a literal friend of the show.
True.
And then we also say it in jest. So when I listened, I was cracking up, and I think I texted Evan afterwards, and I was like, that episode was just perfect. I loved it. Thanks for being on. It's funny because Evan and I actually happened to talk on the phone shortly before we invited him to come on the show. And he was like, yeah, I was listening to the episode. And when you all said I was a sweet summer child, I had to look that up. I had no clue what it was. So I was so glad he recounted
he texted me immediately about that. Yeah.
I was so glad he recounted that on the show, because he was like, I don't know what a sweet summer child is. I don't understand. And several people said something to me about that. I wasn't sure if they weren't sure how to take it, if we were making fun of Evan or just what. And it wasn't. It was he was being sweet and doing the thing that we sometimes do, which is help me understand. I don't get it.
Okay. every one of us brightens up when we even hear Evan's name. But I'm going to take a hard tack here. I'm going to take a hard line.
Mhm.
This motherfucker knew exactly what he was doing.
Of course.
He knew that we all view him in such a positive light that he could get away with claiming literally any human on earth as a friend of the show. And all we could do was like laugh, laugh the way we did. I've never laughed with such joy on the show. I listened to that episode the other day. I was like, what? Why do I sound like such like a happy person? I'm not that happy. Like Evan just brings it out of you.
Mm-hmm. He does.
Lisa, you're not a friend of the show. I'm sorry. Currently. Okay.
That's hilarious.
I'm taking us off topic. I think you took us off topic.
No, you said, did you hear the last episode?
Okay,
Take us a little bit down. It wasn't down the rabbit hole. It's just a little tributary. Look, you're gonna go on some rides with me, okay?
Well, totally agree. You and me, like we've done this before. I get it. Also, our producer has COVID, and I don't want to keep him up too late tonight.
Okay.
Let's try and keep moving.
Okay. I'm back on track. Sorry, Scott. We love you.
So, anti-trans things that happened in the last week. Friday of last week, there was a quote-unquote detransition rally alongside the California Republican Convention. This was not by mistake. Harmeet Dillon, the attorney who tried to become the new chair of the National Republican Party, is the lawyer for the person who put on this event. This is an anti-trans event, whether anyone tries to tell you that or not. Detransitioning, totally, if that's the journey you want to take, like that's totally okay, and you should have access to that care. The event was not about that. It was about them not wanting people to be trans at all, ever. Folks showed up. Mm-hmm. The trans community showed up. They did a great little celebration of the trans community in Southside Park. They marched down to the Capitol and they made themselves known and heard. Not only that, they came up against some far right, many of them fascist leaning, like literal white nationalists as well, live streamers and things like that. And they let their skulls know what they thought about that. One thing that did happen was towards the end of that march, which I didn't see that. I had left by the time this happened. Yeah. But a far right, let's put it this way, a far right live streamer's sister, who was right next to him, pulled a gun on the trans rights activists. I don't know what else you want to hear, folks, but that's not okay. She did get pepper sprayed for that one. But like, these are the people these folks are up against. So when trans folks talk about like how they're fighting for their lives, like the real data is about, the trans women who have died year in, year out. And then beyond that, the shootings we've seen at like drag shows and stuff like that. But then even just like something like this, a demonstration like this, this white woman from Clovis, I believe, all these people are from towns with names like that, pulls a gun on them. And then she gets to shuffle away and, get the cops to pour milk on her eyes when they respond. And so to me, that's really, it's a sign of the times. I don't know. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. I should say, I don't even know if there's anything I need to add to that. It is infuriating that we live in a world where people's ability to just exist is so threatening to other people. Like it feels a little bit like, people are minding their own business, living their lives, and people are making it their business to go in places that they don't need to be, and to be awful for the sake of just not choosing not to be. Like, it takes so much energy and effort to show up in the world this way. And I mean, as like a bigot and as a like, you could just not. It's the path of least resistance. Just don't. Like it's one of those times where like people are always asking you to do things and they require a lot of time and energy, but this one really doesn't. It's just like, just wake up tomorrow morning and don't.
Yeah. But they did. And then it was a whole week of sort of moments where anti-trans folks were just bound to come out. So that was, of course, the thing. Friday, Sunday, I believe morning of last week, there was a drag queen story hour here near the Central Grid in Sacramento. A lot of folks in the community came out, actually, including Councilmember Katie Maple. So that was really cool to see. And they came out, and it was a nice little story hour. A lot of kids enjoyed, the book. Proud Boys tried to come out. They tried to disrupt it. The far right Proud Boys, and community would not let them. Not only not let them in, but not let them literally anywhere near the place. And before it ended, they sort of just shuffled off with their tails between their legs. So good job, folks, on that. Like, that was a real beautiful community moment. So two events in a row where the community showed out and said, there's more of us than you. You're not welcome in Sacramento, to these anti-trans folks. And then Tuesday night, March 14th, Charlie Kirk, this national level troll, Republican far right troll, who kind of looks like, I feel like I'm on mushrooms every time I look at his face, because like the features of his face are really tiny. You've never done mushrooms, Flo. We'll talk when you've done mushrooms.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk when I've done mushrooms. That way I can better relate to this experience.
Yeah, but it's like your qualities, if you look in the mirror or look at a person when you're on mushrooms, it's like they get very like accentuated. So like my ears would get really big if I looked in the mirror or something, or like so you look at him, he looks like a person you would look like who has like small facial features while you're on mushrooms. It's like if the face was like right in the middle of your face. Anyway, I'm getting us off topic now. He said a lot of very horrific anti-trans things. The Bee wrote about it. A great opinion writer, Hannah Holzer, wrote a great piece on it. Too bad the lawyers at the Bee buckled to it, because everything she said was fucking on point. He did say things saying that they want to deal with trans folks the way they were dealt with in the 50s and 60s. Folks, what do you think that means? Do you think that means anything beyond killing them? Like lynching them? Like, I don't know how else you interpret something.
There's
like
no
that.
other way for this to be interpreted. And I am sympathetic when people say something like, there are lots of like, colloquialisms that we have in our culture that maybe people don't always know the origins of and may use incorrectly because of their assumption about what it means. Handle things like they're in the 1950s and 60s is not one of those.
There are very few things I want handled like they were in the 1950s and 60s.
I was just about to say that, like, I'm really struggling to come up with an example of something that I want to be handled the way it was in the 50s and 60s. Because the way that I'm seeing things is like, we didn't have Brown versus Board of Education until 1954, so I certainly don't want to go to school like I was in the 50s or 60s. We were still actively lynching and setting dogs on people. We did not have the Voting Rights Act, which means that there's a large swath of women, especially brown women, who couldn't even vote. Like, I don't know what I want to handle like the 50s and 60s. like Pride was a protest, right? Like I just like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, he knew what he was saying. He knew what he was doing.
And he can turn around and say, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. And I'm like, no, that's exactly like, then what did you mean? Well, how did we handle things in the 1950s and 60s that you're referencing? Show me the receipts. You
saw what he said, right?
I didn't see. All I heard him say was, that's not what I meant.
He's like, well, there was a man in the women's locker room. We would send the cops in and arrest him and the DA would prosecute him. Fuck you. That's not what you meant.
That is never. And wasn't his quote something about like, the men should handle it the way they did in the 50s or 60s? So if there was,
I don't remember.
So if someone was somewhere they weren't supposed to be, you would assume that there was a man in the women's locker room who's going to call the police for
handling it.
Like handle it.
Right.
Like, come on, dude. I'm not buying this.
No. The bee crumbled to it. I don't think Hannah, great columnist at the Bee, I don't think she wanted to bend to this. But I think the McClatchy lawyers are a little finicky. But it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate when you bend to the far right like that, because when you do that, you're telling them that you will bend even further.
Mm-hmm.
So don't give them even an inch. I do think that there's some fear in McClatchy right now. Obviously, another columnist is being sued by an NBA player currently at the Bee. And Flo, what are your thoughts on that?
I have complicated thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a complicated topic, and I wasn't. It's probably not with 3 minutes left in the episode something for us to cover.
I feel like we should definitely hold this one for either a not so funny intro in the future or even a segment.
I think we wait until the Bee files a response.
Okay.
That's what I would like to do. So that we at least get the initial thoughts on both sides. I've been talking to First Amendment professors on that case already and sort of getting a better view on it.
And maybe we
for
do
folks
a First
who don't know, I'm like
episode.
fascinated by the First Amendment.
Yeah.
And so Charlie Kirk cannot sue me as much as his people want to say he can on Twitter. He cannot sue Hannah as much as his people want to say he can. But I would love him to sue me because I would love the discovery process on that side. But like, it is really important, like, to cover First Amendment issues.
Yeah. And I think we should probably do a First Amendment episode because I know you all talked about it briefly on the show last week. And, and I definitely know my thoughts on what is and is not protected speech has definitely evolved over time. And so I'd love to have that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, where we are is hate speech is very, very protected in America. Mm-hmm. And it like you live with it. And there was a time when 15 years ago, when I was the First Amendment purist, and increasingly I'm like, I think we can work our way around this. I've seen plenty of other developed quote unquote countries that have found a way to outlaw fascist, hateful rhetoric without tromping on the rights of leftists or anyone else. So
yep.
I think this is one worth exploring. I think the US is long overdue for that one.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Anything else we want to do before we call it?
I don't think so.
All right. Flo, I had a very fun time with you today.
This was fun.
We don't get to hang too often in person. That's not true. We do kind of regularly.
I was going to say, I see you pretty often.
Well, when did I see you last?
Like a weekend, like just before I left for Hawaii.
That sounds right. Fuck.
You came to my show. We went out and had a drink.
Oh yeah, that was such a fun night. Oh my god, that was such a fun night.
A couple of weeks in a row. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Fuck you for being right.
That was like February 28th. So it was like a day and a half before I left for Hawaii.
I have no response to you're one of the few people that can corner me. All right, fucking fine. Well, I guess, Skylar will edit that out and we'll just call it a night.
You know he won't. I'm banking on COVID to make it so that Skylar is just like phoning in on this one.
Cut it out, man. Please cut it out. All right. Well, let's call it, and good night, everyone.
Good night.